If a summer trip to Spain sounds like a good time, consider following the wisdom of the locals and head north.
Northern Spain not only offers an experience that can rival any other Spanish destination, it allows for a chance to escape the heat and the crowds that you'd find elsewhere.
Well, for most travelers, I'd suggest setting aside 2 weeks.
I'll present an aggressive 11-day itinerary to show how to optimize your time. If you have it, just add a few days in the cities that you're most interested in. Either way, I'm confident that this road trip is one that you won't want to miss. Prepare to get your steps in too. In addition to being home to one of the world's most famous pilgrimages, the El Camino de Santiago, you'll spend plenty of time walking through many incredible cities that you may never have heard of before. Rest assured, you won't forget the views and the narrow cobblestone streets that take you between amazing cathedrals and lively plazas. This drive also goes along a dramatic coastline where you'll find a land of contrasts, ample stunning beaches to relax on, and world-class mountains to hike. The region also features its own distinct culture with a number of unique languages and memorable culinary experiences that range from free tapas with every drink to numerous Michelin star restaurants.
I'm Jeff. I love to travel and inspire others to do the same by sharing plans to make it easy. So with that said, let's get to it.
Here's a quick overview of the itinerary. First off, let's define the region as the coastline that runs from just above Portugal to the border of France along the Cantabrian Sea. This trip will take you across the autonomous communities of Galicia, Asturias, Cantabria, and the Basque Country. Starting from the west, this trip originates in the coastal town of Vigo. After a day trip to the nearby islands, the plan continues to Santiago de Compostela to visit the awe-inspiring cathedral. Complete your time in Galicia by taking a drive along the far remote northwestern coast of Spain to the port city of A Coruña. Next is a stop to the memorable Cathedral Beach, along the way to the Asturian capital of Ovideo, one of Spain's cleanest cities that features beautiful medieval architecture. From there, head inland to see the highlights of the Picos de Europa National Park, before returning to the beautiful coastal town of Santander in Cantabria. The remaining days are in the Basque Country. First is Bilbao. This former industrial city has revitalized itself with the famed Frank Gehry-designed Guggenheim Museum. Finally, the trip wraps up on the iconic tourist hotspot of San Sebastian.
During the video, I'll also share a few popular stops that you'll definitely want to check out along the way.
The trip starts in the far western part of Spain in the town of Vigo.
The region is known as Green Spain, but it may remind you more of Ireland. To get to Vigo, you can come through Porto, Portugal, fly in through other cities throughout Europe, or take a high-speed train from other ports in Spain.
Upon arriving, take some time to familiarize yourself with the city. As sunset approaches, head to the Castro Fortress. I took a taxi to the top, where I was treated to amazing views of the city and bay. While the fortress dates back to 1665, it was home to the city's first settlers, sometime between the 1st and 3rd centuries BCE. As night begins to fall, head down towards the old city for dinner.
A few things to note for planning your trip. Businesses normally close for a few hours in the afternoon, so plan to have your lunches between the hours of 1 and 3 in the afternoon, and don't expect dinners to start until after 8 p.m.
Plan to start early the next morning to spend the day on one of the world's most beautiful islands. Well in advance of your trip, you'll need to make a reservation with the park to tour the Cies Islands. These protected islands restrict the number of visitors, and a reservation code is necessary before you're able to book a ride aboard one of the authorized ferries. Your day will center around 2 activities. In the cooler morning hours, plan to hike to the lighthouse for some incredible views. I recommend packing a pair of comfortable shoes, as it will take about 2 hours in and back, and about 150 meters of elevation gain. You'll also want to pack a towel and swimsuit, as you'll have plenty of spectacular beaches to choose from. As you look out from the forested hills, you'll find incredible white sand beaches. While the popular Praia de Rodas is a great option near the lagoon, preferred the beach to the north. It also has a great private spot just to the east of the main dock that's also worth checking out just before you catch the boat back in the evening for dinner and an overnight stay. After an eventful few days in Vigo, pick up your rental car for the remainder of the trip. You're starting a nearly 1,000-kilometer adventure. Your first stop is about an hour north in Santiago de Compostela. This is a lively university city that features a walkable old town known for its famed Basilica, the reputed burial site of St. James. Relative to the other cities on this trip, I found this to be the most touristy due to the many international visitors which were completing the pilgrimage.
While I didn't undertake it, I spent plenty of time on my feet walking atop the cathedral.
Don't miss out on this experience and book it well in advance. And while an English tour isn't offered, this unique experience affords you the ability to move about freely on the roof to capture endless views. In Santiago de Compostela,
Plan to go out on a tapas tour. Order a drink and anticipate your server to come back with a tapa. It's a great way to go out and experience the city's nightlife.
For the final day in Galicia, plan to drive along Spain's far northwest coast to A Coruña. The first stop is the Forzanza Monastery that dates back to the 12th century. As you walk along the monastery, you'll find a bridge over a creek. The drive down the road is quite steep, and only take it if you're comfortable driving back up. It was a little touch and go for my underpowered Ford. Plan to go up a little upstream to find a hidden waterfall. It's definitely worth a stop, and there's a good chance you'll find yourself alone in a magical place that is surrounded by a mossy forest. Once you reach the coast, you won't be far from the lighthouse at Fisterra. Many pilgrims continue on to the final stop to take in the beautiful views. If lighthouses are your thing, there are a few further north along the way, including the one at Cape Vilan that features a nice museum. There's also an opportunity to stop and check out the Enzaro waterfall. If you're keen on getting up close, there's also an option to rent kayaks. If you prefer to spend more time in the city, you can consider driving directly to A Coruña, and it'll only take about an hour. In addition to featuring its own large urban beach, it has a famous lighthouse, the Torre de Hercules. This UNESCO heritage site dates back to the 1st century, and while it's been updated many times, is considered to be the world's oldest working lighthouse and second tallest in Spain. I really enjoyed exploring the city at night, particularly visiting the main square across from the city hall. Well ahead of your trip, make sure to book a timed entry for Cathedral Beach. Plan your day around visiting at low tide to get the full experience. Stopping at Cathedral Beach will conveniently break your 3-hour drive to Ovideo in half. While I found it to be comfortable to walk around barefoot, I wouldn't recommend planning to spend the time in the water. The beach is just really too crowded with tourists to be a really relaxing place to hang out, in my opinion. That said, it's definitely worth visiting. Once you're admitted, there's a number of caves and passages to explore in the area close to the entry. Further afield, you'll encounter an incredible arch that's right along the surf. While spectacular, the really amazing part is just a little bit further down where you'll find a series of 3 sequential arches. Up next is the state of Asturias and its capital city, Oviedo. It's known for being one of the cleanest cities in Spain, features a great culinary scene, and a unique tradition of drinking cider, where your server will pour your drink from a fully extended arm. This step enhances the flavor and should be consumed in full each pouring. The Old Town is great for walking around, shopping in the open markets, eating in cafes, or retouring some of the local museums. If you love green space, also check out the large urban park. Just a short drive up the hillside, you'll find an ancient palace complex overlooking the city. It is comprised of 2 churches that date back to the 9th century. I particularly enjoyed taking pictures of the Church of Santa Maria del Naranco. If you have some extra time, visiting the more laid-back city of Gion could also be worth considering. To fully take advantage of what the Picos de Europa offer, plan to spend 2 nights in the area. The first must-see destination is Covadonga, which is about an hour from Oviedo. Upon arriving, you'll find an incredibly scenic basilica that is nestled between the mountains. If that wasn't compelling enough, take a short walk and you'll find a small outdoor sanctuary cut right from the cliff face with a waterfall cascading below it. I was fortunate to find a parking spot in the nearby lot.
It's limited to 2 hours, but if you're really careful with how you manage your time, it is doable, as you can no longer drive up to the site's main attraction,
The high mountain lakes of Covadonga. I made this happen by getting a ride at the taxi stand right where the restricted drive starts. For those that are less risk adverse or wanting to spend more time, there's an option to take a bus from 5 different park and ride locations. Just be prepared for some longer waits.
The drive up the mountain is really spectacular. On each of the winding turns, I found more awe-inspiring views, as well as the occasional herd of cows.
Upon driving, you'll have an option to climb a small hill that separates the two lakes, offering you a 360-degree view of the area. If you end up taking a bus, set aside extra time to go on a hike and explore the area. It's truly a beautiful place. As evening falls, I recommend staying somewhere in the area near the small town of Cangas de Olmos, where you'll find a number of restaurants. Plan to hit the road early the next morning to undertake an adventure that will span 3 different autonomous regions.
Arriving before 9 should allow you to secure a parking spot close to the trailhead of Ruta de Caras. You'll save a lot of time driving if you start your hiking day from the north.
Prepare for a well-marked 11-kilometer hike with about 1,100 meters of elevation gain, most of which happens at the start of the hike. While walking through the narrow valley, prepare to take in some awe-inspiring views of the peaks from the trail that hugs the mountain. Occasionally go through tunnels and cross through a series of bridges over the river. You'll also be accompanied by a number of friendly goats. I did the hike in less than 4 hours, just in time to get lunch in the small town of Caín de Valdión. Rather than completing an in and back hike, I suggest booking an excursion that will take you through the Eastern Valley. I booked well in advance to secure a seat, and it was well worth it. In addition to avoiding the long hike back, we also had an informative guide who treated us to an amazing experience. While it is bumpy, there are a few places where you're able to drive along the crest of a ridge with major expansive views in all directions. Along the way, you'll stop a handful of times to stretch your legs, including where you'll find Europe's longest single-span cable car that climbs 753 meters. If you're lucky, you'll even find some unique wildlife, such as the robico, which is only found in this area and most closely resembles the cross between a mountain goat and antelope.
Your driver will take you right back to where you parked your car. From there, I suggest heading back towards the coast for an overnight and late dinner.
Up next is the small state of Cantabria. I'll present a few options to consider. If you love the architecture, the coastal town of Comillas features a 19th century summer chalet that happens to be one of Gaudi's first projects. Further east, you'll find the town of Santillana del Mar. I wanted to like it more. I felt that it was quite touristy. The region also has a number of caves with prehistoric paintings that you can explore. For animal lovers, there's a large wildlife safari park that features cable car rides and even allows you to tour in your own car. My last suggestion is to take extra time in the capital city of Santander. This coastal city really has an elevated feel to it. At the far end of the peninsula, you'll find the beautiful Sardinero Beach, not far from the great urban park with the Magdalena Palace, which originally served as the royal family's summer retreat. Later, take some time to explore the lively city center and waterfront. After exploring Cantabria, plan to set aside a full day in Bilbao. Anticipate about an hour drive to get to the largest city in the Basque Country. Although Bilbao has a long history as an industrial city, it has undergone a recent renaissance with the opening of the Frank Gehry-designed Guggenheim Museum. Modern art lovers will be treated to Warhol, Rothko, Koons, and many other immersive experiences. Once you've had your fill, I recommend wrapping up your time in Bilbao by heading over to the Old City to explore and have some dinner. On your way from Bilbao to San Sebastian, consider adding an hour excursion to the 90-minute drive to visit Gaztelugatxe. If you recognize it, it may be from Game of Thrones. You'll find a narrow path that is lifted by a series of arched bridges that connect a rocky island to the mainland. Prepare to not only tackle the 241 steps up, but also an equally challenging ascent back to get to the parking lot. At the top, there's a small church that dates back to the 10th century. While it wasn't open when I visited and the weather wasn't great, I would still recommend it as a unique experience. If you do plan to go, make sure to make a timed entry reservation well in advance for the peak season. After a long trip, it's unlikely that San Sebastian will leave you ready to head home soon. This Basque city is a true highlight and features some must-see beaches. Consider renting an umbrella and relaxing on the crescent-shaped La Concha beach. It is clear, the temperature is comfortable, and the view is spectacular. There's also some more active options where you're able to hike the hills on either side of the beach, one of which features a large statue of Christ.
The other, a small amusement park, will leave you feeling like you stepped back in time.
It dates back over 100 years and even offers a funicular to the top. Other options include getting out on the water. even if it's for a quick sailing excursion to Santa Clara Island at the center of the bay. Beyond the phenomenal urban beaches and picturesque views, San Sebastian is home to one of my favorite culinary experiences, pinchos. These tapas-like appetizers are often served with a toothpick or skewer. Plan to take an evening in the old city, to hop between the various bars, where you should order a drink and the pincho from the top of the written menu. That's usually the best and the offering they're most known for. To wrap up the night, you also can't go wrong with trying some of the local cheesecake. It's an amazing way to wrap up an adventure across northern Spain. As for the best time to go, if you want to spend time in the water and see the sun, the summer will be the best. It's also not so hot that it's uncomfortable like the rest of Spain. While I always recommend the shoulder months of May and September for visiting Europe, these destinations do not suffer from over-tourism as much if you want to brave the crowds.
If you don't have an aversion to rain, don't dismiss the idea of visiting during other seasons, as the climate is quite mild throughout the year.
When budgeting for high season prices, finding well-appointed hotels under $200 a night shouldn't be a challenge. Dining experiences will likely run about 2/3 of what you would expect to spend in the United States for comparable services. Excluding airfare, this trip can be completed comfortably with a budget between $4,000 and $6,000 for 2 people.
Let me know in the comments if you visited northern Spain. I'd love to hear what you thought about it. If you've enjoyed this video, check out my other videos and subscribe. While I'm sure this could be your next perfect trip, stay tuned to see what's next.